There are few Sega franchises or games that better represent how innovative, creative, and bold Sega was during the 90s than the Panzer Dragoon series. For those of you who were either too young to remember the Panzer Dragoon series, or you were too busy doing barrel rolls and saving ungrateful douchebag birds from certain death, Panzer Dragoon was a rail shooter released on the Sega Saturn in 1995 and developed by the legendary Team Andromeda. The game had you riding an odd-looking dragon as you blasted a bunch of equally odd-looking enemies and bosses in full 3D. Beyond the eccentric art direction, Panzer Dragoon stood out from the pack by enabling the player to rotate around their dragon mount 360 degrees. This awesome gameplay mechanic allowed you to both shoot down enemies all around you and also take in just how awesome and creative each stage looked. Panzer Dragoon would later spawn various sequels and even genre hop into the realm of RPGs with Panzer Dragoon Saga in 1998. Sadly, after Saga, the series really faded into obscurity with the exception of Panzer Dragoon Orta in 2002 on the original Xbox. And let's be honest, no one actually played Orta because they were too busy busting a cap in Covenant aliens and shanking people on Xbox Live with that beam sword. But after Orta, the series went quiet for nearly 2 decades until the good folks at Megapixel Studios almost created world peace by announcing a complete remake of the original 1995 Panzer Dragoon. Panzer Dragoon Remake was released to much praise in 2020, and on top of that, Megapixel Studios officially announced they're also giving Panzer Dragoon 2 Zwei the remake treatment as well. So in other words, Panzer Dragoon is back on the menu, boys. With Panzer Dragoon brought back to life thanks to its remake, I thought it would be a good opportunity to go back and look at the top 5 games in the Panzer Dragoon series. So whether you love the Panzer Dragoon series and have played the hell out of it over the years, or you are just looking for a good place to jump into these criminally underrated games, this list should have a little something for everyone. But enough chit chat, let's jump into our list and find out which Panzer Dragoon titles you need to pick up and play. Number 5, Panzer Dragoon 2 Zwei. We'll start our list off right with the sequel to the first game, which also happens to be its prequel as well. Confused yet? Good. Yep, in terms of story, which admittedly can be hard to follow in these games, Panzer Dragoon 2 Zwei takes place nearly 2 decades after the events of the first game. However, there's little carryover in terms of story and characters, so whether you decide to play this game first or the original Panzer Dragoon, it is up to you and you can't go wrong either way. But with that out of the way, Zwei? Zebra? However you pronounce it, sorry German viewers, is an outstanding entry in the series that will have you alternating between mowing down enemies all around you both on foot and in the air in this sequel that did not disappoint at all. On top of that, your dragon will evolve Pokemon style after each stage and after humiliating Brock at the Pewter City Gym. But as your dragon changes appearance from derpy looking lizard to kick-ass flying death machine, you'll be battling an assortment of enemies and bosses which in my opinion have the first game beat. Unfortunately, the reason for Zwei not ranking higher on this list has to do with the game's tendency to be downright cheap and poorly designed in certain sections, which nearly had me needing to order a new Saturn controller off of eBay several times. Luckily, you can kinda compensate for these bullshit sections by using your mount's Mega Laser, which was a welcome new feature. But regardless of the game's tendency towards sending you into a blind rage, Panzer Dragoon 2 Zwei is an excellent entry in the franchise and one you have to experience ASAP. Number 4, Panzer Dragoon. Where it all began. The first Panzer Dragoon game is still, to this day, an incredibly fun, addictive rail shooter that is a must-own for anyone who still owns a Saturn. Hell, even if you don't, this game was ported to a variety of other platforms over the years, including the PC, PS2, and is even unlockable in Orta. But regardless of how you play the original Panzer Dragoon, it's a must-play if you want to get into this series. The game opens with bored young moisture farmers on a desert world shooting womp rats on their T-16s. Oh wait, wrong work of fiction. No, you're hunting down sand lobsters when one of the characters happens upon an ancient cave with a massive monster inside, followed by you getting drawn into the middle of 2 dragon riders locked in combat. Then, one of the fallen riders transfers his essence to you before dying and sends you on your journey to stop the other dragon rider from reaching an ancient tower. Overall, the story is really nothing special, but what really matters is the journey itself. The original Panzer Dragoon is still an impressive, fun game, and back in 1995, this would have been mind-blowing to be able to blast everything all around you and go toe-to-toe with the insane enemies and bosses in this game. In terms of gameplay and presentation, Panzer Dragoon is impossible not to enjoy, which is precisely why you need to experience it if you haven't. But definitely check the original game out and see where it all began. Number 3, Panzer Dragoon Remake. First off, I went back and forth as to whether the remake deserved its own spot on this list, or if it needed to be lumped in with the original game. You might be thinking right now, of course it needs to be its own entry, just look how different it looks, dumbass. Well, this is undoubtedly true. The fact remains that Panzer Dragoon's modern remake is probably one of the most faithful remakes I've ever played. Seriously, this game somehow retains all the charm, atmosphere, and specialness of the original game, even though it looks significantly more modern from a visual standpoint. For one, the gameplay and soundtrack are virtually unaltered, all while the visuals seem to fully realize what the original Saturn version was going for, but couldn't accomplish due to the limited technology available during the mid-90s. The end result is a game that looks amazing, but still left me with that intense sentimental feeling that I get when playing the original on my Sega Saturn. On top of that, there is also the huge benefit of this game being available on modern gaming platforms, which makes it significantly more convenient to acquire and play. For these reasons, it just barely edges out the original as the version to play, and regardless of whether or not you ever get to play the original, I can't say that you're missing out a bunch as long as you have the 2020 remake loaded into your PS4 or Switch. That's just how good this remake is. Number 2, Panzer Dragoon Orta. Sadly, Panzer Dragoon Orta has become the redheaded stepchild of the series thanks to it being released on a console not well known for anything outside of Halo and other games developed by Western game studios. But for the few otakus and people pretending their Xbox was the Dreamcast 2 thanks to titles like Otogi, Outrun 2, and of course Panzer Dragoon Orta, they experience one of the best games in the entire franchise. Panzer Dragoon Orta has you piloting an awesome dragon just like the other games, however this time you're able to change your dragon's appearance and abilities on the fly. Switching your dragon's type is a necessary gameplay mechanic since certain sections, enemies, and bosses will require the advantages of a certain type's abilities to get past. On top of that, Orta is still maybe the most visually impressive title in the series, which is truly a feat in itself seeing how this game is going on nearly 20 years old. So despite this game being released too late to be relevant and too soon to be nostalgic, Orta is almost the best time you can possibly have when it comes to Panzer Dragoon games. And luckily, thanks to the Xbox being one of the most accessible older consoles to obtain and collect games for, Orta should be a no-brainer in terms of you going out and tracking down a copy. However, there is still one Panzer Dragoon game that warrants a purchase above Orta, and you'd be an absolute fool not to own if you call yourself a Panzer Dragoon fan, hell, even just a retro video game fan. So what game could that be? Number 1, Panzer Dragoon on the R-Zone. Yep, that's right, you haven't played Panzer Dragoon until you've played it on a tiny screen an inch away from one of your eyeballs. The blood red graphics will get your adrenaline going, the 3 positions your dragon can occupy will constantly make you strategize the best place to be, and above all else, you'll feel like you're actually riding on a dragon as you play a game that is literally strapped to your frickin' head. Ha, and you thought Panzer Dragoon Saga was going to be number 1, didn't you? Yeah, that's right. Panzer Dragoon Saga. Actually, you know what? F all the previous games. This is the real Panzer Dragoon experience right here. Okay, enough kidding around. Number 1, Panzer Dragoon Saga. While every Panzer Dragoon game, yes, even the shitty R-Zone port can be considered a unique experience, there is something undeniably special about Panzer Dragoon Saga. Panzer Dragoon Saga's development, release, and of course the game itself are so saturated in mystery, misfortune, and intrigue that it's almost as if the game itself has a soul. Yes, as corny and weird as that statement is, this game has an inescapable allure to it that goes well above and beyond the merits of its gameplay. Panzer Dragoon Saga takes many of the gameplay elements of the on-rail action of all the previous games, but also adds an RPG element such as HP, MP, stats, items, and various abilities to create the deepest, most unforgettable experience you'll have with a game from the Panzer Dragoon series. And even going further than that, Saga is one of the best JRPGs of the late 90s, and it's truly an experience you won't forget. Unfortunately, that's if you can actually acquire this game. Outside Japan, Panzer Dragoon Saga is rare as hell, and will also set you back around $1,000 at least. It's definitely debatable whether this game is worth that kind of money based on the merits of the game alone, and perhaps the focus of a future Is It Worth the Money Wiggles video, wink wink. But regardless, Panzer Dragoon Saga is the pinnacle of the franchise and the best Panzer Dragoon game money can buy. But there you have it folks, the top 5 Panzer Dragoon games. If you want to consider yourself hardcore, or at least be able to mention more than just Star Fox the next time the topic of retro rail shooters comes up, do yourself a big favor and play as many of these games as you possibly can. They're certainly some of the best experiences on their respective consoles, and also also some of the best representatives of a genre that needs more love. Just avoid the R-Zone release. Still feeling kind of bad about that joke earlier. But with that, thank you all for watching. Please throw a like and sub my way, and to all a happy new year as well. Take care, everyone.